Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. After more than 3 years of war, Russia and Ukraine have a limited ceasefire in place, but the attacks are still on. So is this deal just on paper? What exactly does it entail? We'll discuss all of that. Also, why the energy infrastructure in both countries is in focus. First, as key targets in the war, and now possibly the key to peace. So much so that the US wants to control Ukraine's power facilities. We'll explain why. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the ceasefire is over. The war is back, complete with an Israeli ground operation in the Gaza Strip. The Houthis are attacking American ships. We will bring you an update. In India, Grok is hurling abuses, and Elon Musk's company X has taken the government of India to court. In the US, Tesla cars and showrooms are under attack. The administration calls it domestic terrorism. In Turkey, why the arrest of the mayor of Istanbul has triggered nationwide protests. Why China has executed 4 Canadian nationals and how Ottawa has responded. How the Indian weight loss market is ballooning with the entry of new drugs. How Somalia's president came under a terrorist attack on his way to an airport. And it's World Happiness Day today. What does happiness mean to you? We will talk about it. The headlines first. In India, at least 30 Maoists killed in 2 separate encounters in the state of Chhattisgarh. 1 security personnel also lost their life in the gun battle. A large cache of weapons has been recovered from one of the encounter sites. Union Home Minister Amit Shah hails the operation, saying it's a big boost to a Naxal-free India. Iran calls US President Donald Trump's letter to its supreme leader a threat. In the letter, Trump set a 2-month deadline for Tehran to reach a new nuclear deal. Iran claims the US invitation to talks is aimed at deceiving world opinion. During his first term, Donald Trump withdrew from a landmark nuclear deal between Iran and global powers. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the M23 rebels seize another key town. The Rwanda-backed rebels have taken control of a mining hub. It comes despite attempts to broker a ceasefire. On Tuesday, the Congolese president and his Rwandan counterpart held surprise talks in Doha. Indonesia passes a bill allowing its military personnel to hold more government roles. President Prabowo Subianto pushed for amending the Armed Forces Law. He is a former military general. The move has sparked fears of a return to the era of late dictator Suharto, who the president once served. And the saliva ban is lifted for the Indian Premier League this year. The Board of Control for Cricket in India has revoked the ban. It was implemented during the COVID pandemic in 2022. The BCCI has also introduced a new rule for a second ball for the second innings of a match. IPL starts this Sunday. A ceasefire amid drone strikes. Welcome to peace talks in the 21st century. As strange as it sounds, this is the reality in Ukraine. There is a ceasefire in place, but it's not clear what it covers. Ukraine and the United States say it covers energy and civilian sites. But Russia says only the energy sector, the rest is fair game. And both sides are making good use of this confusion. Russia fired 171 drones at Ukraine today. Dozens of them were shot down, but the rest hit targets across the country. Video shows smoke and fire over Ukrainian cities. Similar strikes were reported yesterday too. Take a look at this. Ukraine also launched attacks today. They fired around 130 drones at Russia. One of the targets was the Engels Air Base. Now, this is not located near the front line. It is more than 700 kilometers away from Ukraine's border, 700 kilometers. It's also a very important air base. Engels hosts Russia's nuclear bomber planes. Unofficially, these are called White Swans. It's not clear if those planes were damaged, but footage showed a massive fire and damage to a nearby hospital. Like I said, it's a strained ceasefire, but the hope is to build on this partial agreement to ultimately sign a full ceasefire. Ukraine is certainly keen on that. Yesterday, their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke to Donald Trump. You may remember how their last conversation went. It ended with Zelensky being kicked out of the White House. This time, things went better. Trump and Zelensky spoke for close to 1 hour. The US president called it a very good phone call. He said it centered around the conversation that he had with President Putin. So basically, it was a debrief of sorts. Zelensky called the conversation positive and frank. He also called for a full truce. Of course, that means making concessions to Russia. But is Zelensky willing to make those concessions? He says there is no pressure from Donald Trump to do so.
Today, I have not felt any pressure from President Trump. There wasn't any pressure, that's a fact. I am a sincere person. If that were the case, I would say.
So what are the next steps? How do we turn this partial truce into a full truce? Well, that requires mainly two things. One is building trust, and the second is more talks and diplomacy. That's what you need. Trust building will not be easy, not after 3 years of intense fighting. But yesterday we saw a ray of hope. Russia and Ukraine released 350 prisoners of war. That's 175 prisoners from each side. They were released, they were welcomed with celebrations and relief. Take a look. This was one of the largest prisoner swaps since the invasion. It's a good move, but it's not going to be enough, as evident from today's drone exchanges. Which brings us to the second step, talks and diplomacy. Engagements are happening all over Europe. In Brussels, European Union leaders huddled for a summit. It was their second meeting this month. All countries except Hungary are expected to back Ukraine's sovereignty. Zelensky spoke to the leaders via video link. Again, it was sort of a debrief. He told EU leaders about his conversation with Donald Trump. He also urged Putin to drop so-called unnecessary demands. The second key meeting is happening in Britain. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting EU defence ministers, and this meeting is focused on maintaining the peace. Like which countries will deploy peacekeepers, what sort of weapons will Ukraine get, and how can Russia be deterred? That's what they'll all discuss. London says around 30 countries have agreed to contribute. If not with soldiers, then in some other way. They'll all pitch in. And Prime Minister Starmer means business, because ahead of this meeting, he made a big visit. Starmer travelled to Northern Ireland, to where the UK's nuclear weapons are stored, and he made it a point to flaunt them.
We've just come off the Vanguard-class submarine to see the team. They've just been on a tour constantly at sea, part of our nuclear deterrent, and it was the opportunity to say to them at the end of a long patrol, welcome home and thank you for the incredible work that they've put in keeping our country safe and working with NATO allies on an essential part of our defence capabilities.
So Europe and the UK are coordinating, and their approach will be very significant because Zelensky knows that Europe is more reliable than Donald Trump. So he will depend on advice and input from Europe. Apparently, President Macron of France is taking the lead here. Zelensky says he speaks to Macron almost every day. In fact, yesterday, Macron called Zelensky during Zelensky's press conference. This is how it played out.
Sorry, Manuel, I have just conversation with the journalist. Can I be back in some minutes, in 15, 20 minutes? Yeah, please. Thank you, Manuel. Okay, great, bye-bye. Я тільки що розмовляв з президентом Макроном.
Yes, I have just spoken to President Macron, to Emmanuel. We often talk a lot, once a day, on average.
В середньому і дійсно у нас.
Clearly keen to get on the phone, but I'll tell you who isn't. President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Trump and Putin were scheduled to speak on Tuesday, and this call was slated for 4 p.m. Moscow time. Before that, Putin was attending a business summit. Even as 4 p.m. neared, the Russian president showed no intention of leaving. When reminded, Putin shrugged it off.
По заявлениям Дмитрия Сергеевича Пескова, у вас разговор должен до 18 часов состояться с Дональдом Трампом. Не знаю, насколько он...
Работа такая.
Ну, не знаю, сейчас надо посмотреть, что на эту фразу скажет Трамп. Может быть, он любит интервью давать, может,
Я
уже
же Трампа не упоминал, я
Не-не-не, он узнает, что у нас дискуссии.
Reports say Putin kept Trump waiting for 1 hour. It's an old Russian strategy. Leaders before Putin have also used it. In late 1949, China's President Mao Zedong visited Moscow, and Joseph Stalin made him wait for 5 weeks. 5 weeks for one meeting. Putin was certainly quicker than that. He made Trump wait for an hour, but it's not clear what his strategy is. Next week could offer some clues. Russia and the US, Russian and US officials will be meeting in Saudi Arabia on Monday. Ukrainian officials will also be in the kingdom on the same day. So let's see if something comes out of it. The Russian side is clearly keen to continue the fighting, especially because of the situation in Kursk. This is Russian territory, Kursk. Almost 90% of this territory has been liberated from Ukraine. So why would Putin pause now? As for Ukraine, it's all about the consensus in Europe. Zelensky is leaning on them for support and advice. Let's hope the Europeans advise peace and pragmatism. So after 2 phone calls and hours of negotiation, Ukraine's future hinges on power. I'm talking about their energy infrastructure. Vladimir Putin has agreed to stop attacking it, and this is part of the limited ceasefire deal that he has accepted, a deal that he negotiated with Donald Trump. And Trump himself now wants a share. He wants to run Ukraine's power plants. So this is the new bargaining chip, Ukraine's energy infrastructure. It is getting a lot of attention now. In fact, throughout this war, it has been a target. According to reports, Ukraine has suffered 1,000 attacks in 3 years, and 2/3 of its power grid has been wiped out. Some 8 million households have been plunged into darkness. This has happened through various stages of the conflict. Long story short, Russia has relentlessly targeted Ukraine's energy supplies, and it has proved to be an effective war strategy. You see, in any war, power stations are vulnerable. By striking them, Russia wanted to weaken Ukraine and dent the morale of its people. Without power, they were forced to suffer harsh conditions, especially during the winter months, when temperatures plunge below zero. Without electricity or gas, Ukrainians have struggled to survive in the cold. And Russia has been ruthless on this front. It has launched mass attacks on power facilities using drones and powerful missiles. And to a large extent, Russia has been successful. But thankfully for Ukraine, there was never a total blackout. So this limited ceasefire is a welcome breakthrough for Kiev. It secures their power facilities. The Ukrainian president says he wants a watertight agreement with the Russians.
We were talking about energy security, energy networks, and other civilian infrastructure. That is why I have told President Trump that I think it is important that we prepare the list of objects, formats that Russian long-range missile could not hit, because we're thinking that those objects fit the list of energy and civilian infrastructure.
It is a limited ceasefire, but both Ukraine and Russia will welcome it, because Ukraine too has targeted Russian energy infrastructure repeatedly. Kiev has been launching attacks on Russian oil supplies. It has hit oil refineries, depots, storage units, pipelines and pumping stations. The goal was to hurt Russian oil supplies. In some cases, Kiev was successful. It disrupted the flow of oil, specifically from Russian seaport terminals, and also the Druzhba pipeline. This pipeline is an economic lifeline for Russia. It supplies crude to some European nations. Reports say Ukraine cut Russia's oil refining capacity by as much as 10%. Moscow, though, dismisses this claim. Essentially, they're both playing the same game. Russia targeted Ukraine's power supply. Ukraine targeted Russia's economy to dent revenues from oil exports. And this is still happening. Yesterday, there were fresh strikes in Russia. Ukraine attacked the city of Krasnodar. This is a shipment and storage facility. The city has a shipment and storage facility. It processes more than 28,000 barrels of oil per day. This oil is meant for export. Kiev attacked it using suicide drones. It led to a massive fire. Reports say one oil reservoir was burnt.
Unfortunately, we see that for now there is no reciprocity on the part of the Kiev regime. There have been attempts to strike our energy infrastructure facilities. You know about that, information on this is also available. So we are closely watching whether the Kiev regime will listen to the firm intention of the presidents of Russia and the United States to do everything possible, step by step, to get on the track of a peaceful settlement.
So they're exchanging fire and accusations. Russia says Ukraine is attacking its energy facilities, and Ukraine says Russia is attacking its power infrastructure. This sounds like a ceasefire only on paper. It is yet to take effect. The terms are yet to be worked out. Both sides could use this reprieve, though. The ceasefire won't end the war. It will just be a temporary pause, but a crucial one. If it holds, this 30-day period could be the beginning of the end of the war.
Dying, and there are hostages in Gaza. They are still waiting to release.
Israel is striking Gaza again. The first blow landed on Tuesday. The fragile ceasefire was in danger, and today there was a second round of airstrikes. So it's no longer a violation. It's the end of the ceasefire. War has resumed in the Gaza Strip, and that is the new reality. Let's bring you the latest updates. Overnight, Israel conducted multiple strikes. More than 90 people were killed. Most of them were sleeping in their homes. At dawn, Israel resumed its ground operation. It has taken control of the Netzarim corridor. If you look at the map, this corridor is right in the middle of Gaza. It connects the north to the south. In the month of January, Israel had withdrawn from this corridor after the ceasefire came into effect. A private security agency was stationed there. However, on Wednesday, Israel moved back into the area. It took control of the checkpoints and closed off all access. So Israel has basically created a buffer zone. Gazans can no longer travel from north to south or vice versa. Plus, 150,000 people have been asked to evacuate, and they don't know where to go.
This is not a life. We urge the mediators. We are the ones paying the price with our children and women. What is this? We can't find the time to get displaced. We get displaced every day.
So why is Israel back in the Strip? We told you about this yesterday. Israel says these new strikes are to build pressure on Hamas to ensure the immediate release of hostages. The Israeli defense minister has a message for Gazans: return the hostages and expel Hamas, or face Israel's wrath.
The evacuation of civilians from combat zones will start soon. If all Israeli hostages are not released and Hamas is not removed from Gaza, Israel will act with forces you have never known before.
So Israel says this escalation is to get the hostages back, but their families are not convinced. In fact, they are furious with the government. 59 Israeli hostages are still in Gaza. 24 of them are believed to be alive. A cabinet meeting was scheduled for today, a meeting between the government and the families of these hostages, but this meeting was postponed. The Israeli Prime Minister has not given a reason why, and this has left the families in a limbo. They say the government has abandoned the hostages. They want an immediate end to the war.
When IDF started the war, again, as if we say something, it's against them, it's against the soldiers, but it's not against the soldiers, it's against our government that betrayed our people and the civilians of Israel and the soldiers.
Which brings us to Hamas. Today, its armed wing fired a salvo of rockets towards Tel Aviv. This was in response to the recent escalation. Some of the rockets were intercepted, others fell in an open area. Hamas is also talking to key mediators like Qatar and Egypt. These are the countries that helped seal the first ceasefire, so Hamas wants their help to return to the table to begin talks for the second phase. But it's not going to be easy. When the ceasefire deal was agreed upon, Netanyahu's government became vulnerable. His coalition has some far-right members. They left the government, the likes of Itamar Ben-Gvir. They were against the ceasefire, so they pulled out of the government. After Tuesday's attack, they're back. And this is very crucial politically. Their exit left the Prime Minister with a very slim majority, and their return has restored stability in the government. It has allowed them to pass a key budget today, a wartime budget. And this budget is critical. Had they not passed it, Israel would have faced snap elections. Netanyahu would most probably have lost office. So resuming this war in Gaza is not just a military pressure tactic, it is very much a political move. And Israelis seem to see through it. There were protests in several parts of the country asking for Prime Minister Netanyahu's resignation. On Wednesday night, thousands marched to Jerusalem. They were stopped by water cannons and police force. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has blamed the deep state. He's accused them of weaponizing Israel's justice system. He first posted this from his official account on X. He later deleted the post and he reposted it from his personal account. So this is how things stand in Israel. Elsewhere in the region, there's more turbulence. The Houthis are back again. They have attacked 4 US warships in the last 72 hours, and their new target seems to be Tel Aviv. On Tuesday, they fired a ballistic missile towards Israel. It was intercepted. Yesterday, they struck again. The Houthis fired a missile targeting the Ben Gurion airport in Israel. This one too was intercepted. But it triggered sirens in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a qualitative military operation targeting Ben Gurion Airport in the occupied Jaffa region with a Palestine II hypersonic ballistic missile. This operation successfully achieved its objective, thanks be to Allah.
So Gaza is burning again with bombs falling as if they never stopped. The hostages are still missing. West Asia is on the edge again. It's like the ceasefire never happened. The question is, what comes next? Well, another ceasefire may come, but it may also crumble. This looks like a war with no exit. We have asked a lot of questions about AI, like will it take over jobs? Will it impact national security? And will it replace search engines? But here's a strange one. How do you discipline a rogue AI model? I'm talking about Grok, the AI bot created by Elon Musk. It's on the government's radar here in India. Why? Because of abuses and problematic takes. Who knew a teenager and Grok would be the same? But a rebellious teen is not a national issue. Grok could be. First, let me tell you what the problem is. Elon Musk launched the latest version of Grok last month. You can use it on X, formerly known as Twitter. Mention Grok's ID in your post, and Grok will reply. Just one problem though. This AI bot has turned abusive. It has started responding with Hindi cuss words. Of course, we can't show that here, but I'm sure you've seen what I'm talking about. And that is only the first problem. The second problem is this. Grok is wading into Indian politics. It is branding certain leaders as corrupt and undemocratic, and that too without proof. This is new territory for AI bots. Yes, they've been accused of misinformation, but Grok is also being accused of having an attitude problem. Why is that? The answer is programming. Grok is not going rogue. It was designed to be rogue. In fact, let me quote the company's philosophy. Grok on X, an AI assistant with a twist of humor and a dash of rebellion. I guess abuses now count as humor. Either way, that tells you why Grok is acting out. As for the response, the government is on it. Reports say New Delhi has in fact reached out to officials at X. The IT ministry is looking into whether Grok has violated Indian rules. They are investigating, specifically India's IT rules. I'm sure the law will take its course, but tonight we also want to focus on the human response, on how we should deal with AI bots. It's tempting to see these models as a perfect source of knowledge, but they're not. They are messy cauldrons of data. All AI models are made using bits of data, and that may include propaganda. That may include fake news. And yes, sometimes also abusive language. Unlike humans, AI does not know what is right or wrong. It simply absorbs everything it gets. Of course, the makers can try to install certain filters. For example, ChatGPT often refuses to answer political questions, and that's an inbuilt filter on the bot. But Grok has no such filters. So then what do? The users? We say start using your own processor. I'm talking about our brain, human intelligence. When AI bots tell you something, don't believe it hook, line, and sinker. Do your own research. Maybe read a book and then come to a conclusion, because AI models do get a lot of things wrong. Look at this study from 2024. It says AI bots agreed with false statements 26% of the time. Here's another study. It found that AI search engines showed wrong sources 60% of the time. So your first job is to accept this truth, that AI bots are not perfect. If you still insist on believing them, I have an experiment for you. We asked Grok a simple question. Are you always right? That's what we asked. And look at the answer. No, I'm not always right. I'm not infallible. Even Grok admits that it can be wrong, so humans should accept it too. As for this controversy, expect it to blow up because it's not just about Grok. X and India are facing off over another issue as well, and that is censorship. Elon Musk's company has filed a case against the government of India. It is accusing New Delhi of excess censorship. The same thing happened in 2022 as well. X refused to comply with India's censorship rules. We thought that saga was behind us, but clearly it's not. India's IT rules allow appropriate government bodies to censor content. They can ask X to take down inflammatory things like hate speech or fake news. X says this power has been granted to way too many people, all central ministries, state governments, and tens of thousands of police officers. Now, we haven't heard the government's response yet, but this has all the makings of a new flashpoint. Now let's talk about Elon Musk's Tesla, the electric car company. Over the past few weeks, it has fallen victim to a range of attacks with Molotov cocktails aimed at Tesla showrooms and cyber trucks being set ablaze. These attacks are happening across the US, Canada, and Europe. They're part of the Tesla takedown protests. Now, full points for alliteration, but Donald Trump is not so happy with the way things are playing out. He is taking Tesla attacks in the US very seriously, and his administration is calling them acts of domestic terrorism. So what's behind this anger against Tesla? Here's a report.
In Colorado, Molotov cocktails thrown at Tesla cars and the word Nazi spray-painted on Tesla dealership buildings. In South Carolina, fire set to Tesla charging stations. In Oregon, Molotov cocktails thrown at a Tesla store and more than a dozen bullets fired at another showroom. In Seattle, Cybertrucks set on fire. And now in Las Vegas, several Tesla vehicles shot at and set ablaze. The word resist was painted in red on the store's doors. Different places, different kinds of attacks, but one common link. Attacks on property carrying the logo of Tesla are cropping up across the United States, be it on showrooms, vehicle lots, or charging stations. So far, no injuries have been reported, and in some cases like Colorado and South Carolina, people have been charged. But let's state the obvious. These attacks are not about Tesla vehicles, no matter how oddly shaped they come. These attacks aren't about the electric car company either. It's about the person who owns the said company. Elon Musk, the close advisor of US President Donald Trump and the leader of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. In recent weeks, there have been DOGE-driven cuts to the federal workforce and agencies. Public anger is bubbling. And now there are hashtag Tesla takedown protests. Those who aren't lighting Teslas on fire are putting up cheeky stickers on their own Teslas saying, "I bought this before we knew Elon was crazy." Those who can't afford a Tesla are posting on social media or taking to the streets.
I decided that I wanted to join the protest here and send a message to Elon Musk in a way that I think is very direct. We could adversely impact sales and inflict financial pain on him, similar to the financial pain that he's inflicting on our veterans, our seniors, and a lot of less fortunate people in the U.S., along with our federal workers.
So now the US government is cracking the whip. The FBI is investigating attacks targeting Tesla vehicles. Not as acts of vandalism, no. They are investigating Tesla desecration as a potential act of terrorism. Attorney General Pam Bondi has released a statement. She calls these attacks nothing short of domestic terrorism. You heard that right. The Trump administration is expanding the definition of domestic terrorism for the great genius Elon Musk. Now it will include spray paint on electric vehicles, which is kind of ironic considering that President Trump issued mass pardons for more than 1,000 January 6th rioters who stormed the Capitol building. But moving past that, in a recent interview, Trump has said that the attackers are paid by people who are very highly political on the left. Meanwhile, Bondi has promised to impose severe consequences on those involved in these attacks, including those operating behind the scenes to coordinate and fund these crimes. Speaking of funding, these protests are mostly against Musk's powerful but dubious role in cutting the size of the US government so that the Trump administration can call vandalism terrorism. But by the looks of it, the anger is here to stay. And not just in the United States, there have been peaceful protests outside Tesla dealerships in Europe as well. The UK, Germany and Portugal, also in Canada. There have been some not-so-peaceful attacks as well. Earlier this month, a dozen Teslas were torched in France. This week, 4 Teslas were burnt to a crisp in Germany. And the damage isn't just physical. Tesla is bleeding cash. The company's stock doubled in value soon after Trump's election. But since then, it has shed all those gains. The stock is down more than 30%. In Europe, sales are down 45%. It seems that during Trump's first term, his properties in New York and Washington were the obvious places for protest. But in his second term, Tesla is filling that gap.
Now let's turn our attention to Turkey. For 22 years, the country has been ruled by one man, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Despite poor governance, despite sky-high inflation, despite crashing Turkey's currency, the lira, Erdogan has clung onto power. So what's the secret of his long-lasting reign? These headlines should give you a hint. Yes, Erdogan's top rival has been locked up. His name is Ekrem İmamoğlu. He is the mayor of Istanbul, Turkey's economic capital. He has been mayor of Istanbul since 2019. That's when he defeated Erdogan's party in 2019. Before this, they were in power for 15 years. Istanbul was Erdogan's turf. İmamoğlu took it 6 years back. And since then, Erdogan has tried to oust him multiple times. But the Istanbul mayor has held on. And he was expected to take the fight to Erdogan himself in the next Turkish election. İmamoğlu was supposed to become his party's presidential candidate. And this was scheduled for Sunday. But before that could happen, he was arrested, apparently on corruption and terrorism charges. İmamoğlu is accused of committing fraud. During his time as mayor, he is also accused of helping a group linked to the PKK, the Kurdish party, which Turkey accuses or considers a terrorist outfit. So those are the charges against İmamoğlu: graft and helping terrorists. It's so fortunate for Erdogan that these things just came to light, days before İmamoğlu could officially become his presidential rival. Can you believe the coincidence? İmamoğlu, of course, was not surprised. He saw the police lining up outside his house yesterday, so he put out this video while getting ready for his arrest.
Üzülerek söylüyorum, milletimizin iradesini gasp etmeye çalışan bir avuç akıl, benim sevgili polislerimi, bu ülkenin emniyet güçlerini bu kötülüğe alet ederek evin 16 milyon İstanbullunun konutunun kapısına yığmıştır. Yüzlerce polis yığmıştır. Büyük bir zorbalıkla karşı karşıyayız ama yılmayacağımı bilmenizi istiyorum. Hepinizi çok seviyorum. Ben kendimi milletime emanet ediyorum. Dimdik ayakta olacağımı bütün milletim bilsin.
He remained calm, as you can see, straightened his tie and surrendered to the police. You know who wasn't calm? The Erdogan regime. They deployed police everywhere. They barricaded the streets, shut down some metro stations and put a 4-day ban on public gatherings. Obviously, that did not work.
Faşizme karşı bu kavga sizleri sevgiyle, saygıyla selamlıyor.
There was a massive rally in Istanbul last night. Thousands took to the streets. They were waving Turkish flags and making their voices heard. İmamoğlu's wife was also there. She addressed his supporters.
Bugün sabah saatlerinde gözaltına alınan sadece Ekrem İmamoğlu değildir. Bugün sabah saatlerinde gözaltına alınan 16 milyonlu İstanbul'un iradesidir.
And it wasn't just Istanbul. Protests broke out in the capital, Ankara, as well. People even clashed with riot police. Take a look. The protests continued today despite an escalating crackdown. Social media sites are down, the internet has been slowed, people have been arrested for their posts online. It's a full-fledged crackdown on dissent and opposition. One protester put it quite well.
Today, a coup was made against Turkish democracy, a civilian coup.
We'll be tracking this story as it develops. Now let's turn to Canada. Its diplomats cannot catch a break. Canada could be headed for a snap election. The new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, could call for it in April. Now, with this election looming, Canada's foreign ministry is jumping from one crisis to another. Their ties with India are already strained thanks to their former Prime Minister, and now their relationship with China has taken another hit. Earlier this year, China executed 4 Canadian nationals. China executed 4 Canadian nationals. They were convicted of drug-related crimes. All of them held dual citizenship. They were both Canadian and Chinese. But China does not recognize dual nationality, so it insists that these executions are an internal matter. What's worse, the executions happened months ago, but Ottawa just found out about them. Here's a report.
Canada's relations with China have hit a new low. Earlier this year, China executed 4 Canadians. They were convicted on drug crimes, and Ottawa just found out about this. But that's not the most shocking detail. China claims that they were never Canadian to begin with.
Combating drug-related crimes is a shared responsibility of all countries. China is a country governed by the rule of law and treats defendants of all nationalities equally. The Canadian side should respect the spirit of the rule of law and stop interfering in China's judicial sovereignty.
They were dual nationals, citizens of both China and Canada. Canada's Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, has spoken. She has been tracking the cases for months. She had tried to intervene alongside other officials. Even former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made an attempt. But they couldn't stop the executions, because Beijing doesn't recognize dual nationality. Canada has condemned the deaths, but it's falling on deaf ears. The identities of these 4 individuals have been withheld. There's one more Canadian on death row in China. His name is Robert Schellenberg. Again, he's a Canadian sentenced for drug smuggling. Ottawa has appealed to Beijing for clemency, just like it did in the previous cases. But Canada has failed to move the needle with China. The impasse sums up the state of Canada-China ties. The relationship has been tense for years now. It hit a low point in 2018, when Ottawa arrested a former Huawei executive. Her name is Meng Wanzhou. She's the daughter of the founder of Huawei, Ren Zhengfei. Meng was charged with fraud by the US. Back then, Beijing had retaliated by jailing 2 Canadians. In 2021, there was a breakthrough when Meng was released after a deal with US authorities, but ties haven't improved since then. Canada and China are locked in a trade war now. Ottawa has raised duties on a range of Chinese goods, from food and farm produce to Chinese steel and aluminium, and even electric vehicles. China has hit back with equal force. These executions could be a message from Beijing, and a strong one, that China has no intention of mending its ties with Canada.
There's a battle for India's waistline, and America's Eli Lilly just took the lead. The US pharma giant has officially launched Mounjaro. It's a popular weight loss drug primarily used for type 2 diabetes, and now it's here in India. So how does it work? What does it cost? And why is it in India? First things first, Mounjaro is a diabetes drug, like I said. It is an injectable medicine developed by Eli Lilly. In 2022, it was approved in the United States, and this approval was for type 2 diabetes. But it's also used for weight loss. And here's how it works. Mounjaro mimics two key gut hormones, GIP and GLP-1. These are hormones. This injection acts like them. It increases insulin production, it slows down digestion, it suppresses appetite, and it makes you feel fuller. So you eat less and you shed kilos, or you shed them faster. That's how it helps in weight loss. Now let's look at the cost. The injection is available in several dosages from 2 milligrams to 15 milligrams, and you need to administer it once a week. In India, a single dose of 2.5 mg will cost around 3,500 rupees. 5 mg will be for 4,300 rupees. So the total cost per month could be anywhere between 14,000 to 17,000 Indian rupees, which is high for most people, but much lower than other such injections. And this brings us to the question, why did they launch in India? The simple answer is the sheer size, the size of the Indian market. 80 million people are obese in this country, 80 million. Another 225 million people are overweight. India is third in global obesity rankings, right behind the US and China. By 2034, 11% of our population will be obese. This makes India a major market for weight loss drugs, and the demand is rising. In 2022, India's weight loss market was worth $180 million. In the next 3 years, it could be worth $336 million. That is the projection. So Mounjaro's entry is just the start. Others will follow, both homegrown options and foreign ones. Despite this, reshaping India's weight loss market will take more. There are some key points to consider. The first is greater accessibility. You see, drugs like Ozempic are expensive. Not everyone can afford them. Indian pharma giants are working on some alternatives, some generic versions, which should be cheaper. There's also another silver lining. Drugs like Ozempic contain an active ingredient called semaglutide. It's the semaglutide that causes the weight loss. Danish company Novo Nordisk has the patent for semaglutide. No one else can make a similar drug, not legally. But that patent expires in India in 2026. So next year, Indian drug makers can make generic versions of this, and they should be cheaper. The second point to note is the shift in treatment norms. India has long relied on diet and lifestyle modifications, but these drugs provide an alternative. They also come with risks. Once a person starts taking such a drug, there's the question of long-term dependency. How does this change our relationship with food and exercise? All of this will have to be discussed and navigated. The third point is regulatory challenges. Using Mounjaro will need a doctor's approval, so you will need a prescription. But how do you control unauthorized sales? How do you prevent counterfeits? India will have to look into that. And then there's also the social impact. The rise of weight loss drugs could change beauty standards. Could people feel pressured to take these drugs even if they don't need them? Could it redefine success in fitness from hard work to just an injection? These are all questions that India must look at addressing. And then comes the biggest one of all. What if demand outstrips supply? Who gets priority in such a situation? Is it those who need it medically, the diabetic patients, or those who want it for cosmetic weight loss? So as India opens its doors to this new generation of weight loss drugs, it must also open its eyes to the challenges that come with it. Because the battle for India's waistline is not just about losing weight, it's about who controls the future of weight loss itself. Our next story is from Africa, from Somalia in the east. Somalia has been fighting a terrorist insurgency for years against a group called Al-Shabaab. These terrorists control vast swathes of Somalia and they carry out regular attacks. On Tuesday, Al-Shabaab went for the big prize. They targeted Somalia's president, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. The president was on his way to the airport and a roadside bomb exploded as his convoy was passing by. The president escaped unharmed, but the blast killed at least 4 people. Here's our report.
This is the aftermath of a bomb blast in Somalia, in the capital Mogadishu. A building was reduced to rubble. Smoke and dust filled the air, and people were seen searching through the debris. The blast left at least 4 people dead, but the count could be higher.
A big explosion rocked Mogadishu's Hama Jajab district, especially the host neighborhood. The Abdi Khan building has collapsed entirely. People whom we know and others we don't know were killed in the bomb attack. It is a deplorable incident and we don't want it to happen again. I have heard between 7 to 8 people were killed in the attack.
The terrorist group Al-Shabaab has taken responsibility for the attack. Their target this time was the president of Somalia himself, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. Al-Shabaab tried to get him with a roadside bomb as his convoy was leaving the presidential palace and heading towards the airport. Mahmoud was scheduled to board a flight to Somalia's Middle Shabelle region to the front lines in the fight against Al-Shabaab. So it seems the terror group tried to get him first. The bomb managed to hit Mahmoud's convoy, but the Somali president was unharmed. He made it to the airport. Local media later shared pictures of him in fatigues, purportedly from the front lines. So the attack doesn't seem to have changed his plans. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab continued their attacks, targeting the airport in Mogadishu and a nearby area which houses foreign embassies. This follows a deadly attack last week where Al-Shabaab stormed a hotel, killing at least 10 people. Somalia has been fighting against Al-Shabaab's insurgency for years, since 2009. That's when the group took control of central and southern Somalia, and in 2012, Al-Shabaab declared their allegiance to Al-Qaeda. The United States and other Western nations have joined Somalia in the fight against Al-Shabaab. The African Union has taken on a leading role, supplying troops as part of the AUSSOM, the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia. But despite everyone coming together, they still haven't been able to oust Al-Shabaab, and every year the group ends up killing hundreds of people. The attack on President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud may have failed, but this is a grim reminder of how dangerous the Al-Shabaab can be.
For our last story tonight, let's go back to 1938. That's when researchers at Harvard asked an important question. What makes a person thrive? What makes for a good life, a happy life? So they carried out a study. They recruited 724 participants, a combination of Harvard students and low-income youngsters from Boston. Researchers tracked their lives, from childhood troubles to their weddings to final days. They gathered health records, they asked detailed questions, they took DNA samples, performed brain scans. They tracked the children of the original subjects and then tracked their children. And this went on for 85 years. This study became the longest ever on human happiness, an 85-year-long study. And finally, one very clear finding emerged. Now, when asked what makes for a happy life, scientists confidently say strong relationships. That is the key, strong relationships. Sure, a lot of other factors also matter. A lot of things make you happy. Like for Donald Trump, maybe it is the fantasy of a Greenland invasion, or for Kim Jong-un, another luxury Maybach. But more than money, IQ, or social class, it is our bonds with people that make us happier. They determine our level of fulfillment. And why are we telling you this? because today is the International Day of Happiness, the unsaid official day to talk joy, to celebrate all kinds of good things, and to obsess over the World Happiness Report. Now, this is like a subjective index of happiness. It is seen as a global barometer of joy, and it releases every year. This year, it gives us something predictable. Finland is once again the world's happiest country, apparently, for the 8th year in a row. But the report also told us something surprising. Almost 1/5 of youngsters are unhappy the world over, 1/5 of them. And this is a 39% increase compared to 2 decades ago. Today, 19% young adults have no social support. They believe they have no one to count on. They have most of their meals alone. They don't go out as much. It is a sad state of affairs, quite literally. But youngsters are not isolated in their isolation. The world over, 1/3 of adults are lonely. And unsurprisingly, unhappiness has hit a record high. This comes as good news for capitalism, for the millions of books, podcasts, and movies on happiness, for the $1.8 trillion global wellness market, for the plush market even. After all, in the last quarter, adults, and listen to this, in the last quarter, adults spent more than $1.5 billion on toys for themselves. This may sound like the cost of happiness, but experts say that it really works. The problem is not so much about what people are doing, like sharing reels on their phones or buying a new candle that makes them happy. It's more about what people are not doing. They are not going to that birthday party. They're not sitting with others during lunch. They are withdrawing from experiences. And this saps joy. And the Harvard study is hardly the only one that says so. Ample research shows that people who are more socially connected are happier. They live longer. They have lesser stress. And when we are happy, we are healthier, we work better, we are better positioned for success. So my point is quite simple. Yes, the world can be an unsettling place. Yes, there's a lot going on and a lot going wrong. And when you're feeling tired or stressed, it is hard to find the motivation to socialize, but scientists say that happiness is not something that just happens to you. Happiness, like a muscle, needs to be exercised. Much of it is linked to social fitness. It can be improved. And it can set us up on course for a happier life. Sunita Williams is back on Earth. The rumor is they forgot to bring back Butch Wilmore. Don't know who he is? Well, you're part of the problem. Williams and Wilmore went up to the space station last year. It was supposed to be an 8-day mission, but technical problems stranded them in space until yesterday. After 9 months, Sunita Williams and Wilmore returned to Earth. Time was the big issue here. A few more days and DOGE would have fired them to cut costs. Jokes aside, this is a story of resilience. Yes, they're both professionals. They have been trained for such situations. But what they did required mental fortitude and perseverance. And the internet is celebrating them with memes. Take a look. Now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. In Argentina, hundreds of retirees protest against the government. AI-powered humanoid robots are the newest workers at Berlin's Mercedes factory. And in Finland, locals turn a frozen lake into a carousel ride. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1927, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his followers started the Mahad Satyagraha. It was a movement for basic human rights like drinking water in India. The water of Chowdar tank in Mahad was off limits to lower castes. Ambedkar led a crowd to this tank. They drank water from it in an act of rebellion. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Do you think that Ukraine is at its weakest position?
This war is not about Ukraine.
Do you believe that your president was insulted? Yes or no question. Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Diplomacy will work?
Yes.
Do you think Russia will give up the territory if there is no ceasefire? Do you propose to keep fighting?
We are ready to resist.
Do you think there will be peace?
Many countries gave us 3 days.
President Trump said you don't have any cards.
We do not have another choice.
How do you keep fighting?
You ask me once again the same question.
Because you've not answered my question.
We have enough capacities to keep fighting.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Lakshman.
Good afternoon.
Making headlines in India well before you landed here. New Delhi has raised concerns in the recent past vis-a-vis the Khalistani separatists that operate in New Zealand. How do you propose to address these concerns?
In our democracy, we believe in the freedom of speech.
Organizations like the Al-Qaeda or ISIS were to hold a referendum in New Zealand, something related to one of your Western partners. Would you say the same?
We have very well-defined laws in our democracy.
No specific conversation on Khalistan on this visit.
It was raised with me. I also raised back our position.
Are you willing to be open to these concerns from New Delhi?
As I keep coming back to you to say, we have strong laws in our system.